Good evening, listeners. Welcome to this program of English. Joining the Indian Armed Forces, the first part. Tonight we have with us a special guest. He is Director of Colonel and Commander Defence Academy, which is placed at Coimbatore. And he is Lieutenant Commander Vimal Raj, who has been an intern of Colonel Jaivel of Coimbatore. And he has been a naval aviator and group testing officer who served in the Navy for about 12 years through Short Service Commission. Pleasure to have you here, sir. Welcome to the studios of All India Radio, Chennai.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege for me that you identified me, and it's a very happy moment in my life. I'll be cherishing this, and I'll be happy to share whatever knowledge and information which can actually help the aspirants to know what is Indian Armed Forces.
Yeah, it has been really pleasure, for more reasons than one. See, a young person coming to the studios and talking about Indian Armed Forces, the pride of our nation and pride of every citizen of the country, and also a person who has been, associated with the recruitment process, who knows a fair amount about what goes into the recruitment process, like the staff selection commission, you have service selection board, right?
Correct, sir.
In that, what things go into it, what are the requirements? So on that score, as I was introducing about you, you had, you have this background of group testing officer. Now, let me begin the interview or interaction with you. What is this group testing officer all about?
Okay, fine. For understanding group testing officer, we must have to understand what is Services Selection Board. Now, Services Selection Board is the selection panel which is set by the Indian Armed Forces for somebody who has to join Indian Armed Forces in officer cadre. I'm not talking about the Jawan or the soldiers or sailors. I'm talking about the officer cadre. If you want to join, then you have to clear the SSB, Services Selection Board. It's a panel wherein 3 different techniques are checked on you. So basically, there will be 3 different assessors who will be checking the aspect whether you are suitable to become an Armed Forces officer or not. In that, one technique is called interview technique, the second technique is called as a psychology technique, and the third technique is called as a group testing technique. So I was a group testing officer, and our job role is to analyze the candidates, put into a group environment and check their leadership qualities. So when a group environment is created in a leaderless group, how one individual can emerge out as a leader by going through the task. And that is my job, which normally spread across over a period of 2 days.
Now, for the listeners probably who may not know much about the selection into the armed forces, probably I can share a bit of information. Like all 3 armed forces, they got 3 basic things like NCO, JCO and CO. Okay. A non-commissioned officer who is being recruited at the stage of Jawan.
That's correct.
And then JCO who comes as a promotee from NCO. Correct. And then probably he can even go into CO, commissioned officer. Officers. Yeah, so that is how the general broad, classification of armed forces are there. And the service selection board, as you were telling, a few moments ago, it comprises of 3 components. One is interview, another is psychology, another is group testing, with which you were associated.
Yes, I was a group testing officer, and the technique what we used is called group testing technique.
Group testing technique. Now, there's an interview. As far as interview is concerned, what is this concept of interview as far as recruitment to commissioned officer is concerned?
So interview per se, it will be a normal 45 minutes interview wherein your 15 officer-like qualities are being checked.
What are these officer-like qualities?
Okay, so these are made into 4 subgroups, and the first, we call it as factor 1, factor 2, factor 3 and factor 4. Now let me list out one after the other. In factor 1, there are 4 qualities. Basically, these are the qualities of your head. So number 1, it is like planning and organizing ability. The second is called as a reasoning ability. Third is the organizing ability. And fourth is your power of expression. So these are most of the qualities which is most related to your head and brain. So that way. Second is the qualities of your heart. That is like social adaptability, how well you are able to adapt with others. And then your cooperation. And then last is your sense of responsibility. So these are the 3, which is the factor 2. Now coming on to the factor 3, it is the feelings of your factors of your gut. So that is your self-confidence, initiative, ability to influence others, speed of decision, and liveliness, how cheerful, how lively we are.
So these are 4 qualities.
These are the 15 qualities. First I said for about 4. Next 3. And then another 5. And then the last, that is the factors of your limb, that is your legs. That is determination, courage, and stamina. So I reiterate, it is like 15 qualities made into 4 factors. So factor 1 is qualities of your head. Factor 2 is qualities of your heart. Factor 3 is qualities of your gut. And factor 4 is qualities of your limbs.
So 4 plus 3
these
plus
are the
5 plus 3.
3, that's correct. So these are the officer-like qualities which is being checked in different aspects, you can call it. Interview is one aspect of checking, psychology is other aspect of checking, and group testing is another aspect of checking. So you can say it like at a very conscious level, subconscious level, and unconscious level.
Okay, basically these 15 qualities form the basis of your requirement. Based on this requirement, you have 3 types of testing. One is interview, another is psychology, another is group test.
Correct.
So you assess all these 15 qualities in those 3 streams of tests.
Correct.
Okay. Now, how do you range it? Say about 15 qualities are there. What is the percentage? What is the level of? Are there any qualities which are more important than the other?
No, as far as the learning and what we follow, it is like a few qualities are said to be core qualities. But over a period of time, what we understand and realized it is like every quality is equally trainable over a period of time. For example, power of communication is something very simple to discuss. Like somebody is unable to communicate better, over a period of time he can be trained. So when we look at a candidate, it is not that he has to clear all the 15 OLQs. Around 9 or 10 if he is okay, it's okay for us. But remaining 5-3 should not be a negative thing. Though we didn't find great positive improvement or impact, but nothing should be negative. Like he should not be one where sense of responsibility will be low. If I find a negative quality, he is a continuous rule breaker or something like that. So then if I find anything negative, even in one specific quality, we will not take him. But if 10 qualities at an average level and remaining 4 or 5 qualities, nothing negative is an acceptable thing, because there was nothing negative with the boy. Over a period of time, that can be groomed in training. When we select a candidate also, what we see is that is he a potential candidate or not. So the report what we write, normally we mentioned it is like a potential candidate who can be groomed to become an average officer over a period of time through training at training institutions. That is our academies, what we call it, Indian Military Academy or Indian Naval Academy or Indian Air Force Academy. So that way. So when the training is impacted on him, is he potential enough to take up those training and groom himself to become an average officer? So when he's inducted, he's an average officer. So as he grows in the service, then he rises up to the level of Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Navy Staff, and other.
Yeah. So my understanding, kindly correct me if I'm wrong, like among these 15 qualities, there's not a single quality which you would like to see in a person as negative.
Correct.
But otherwise, if a person has got about, say, 9 qualities, he has got he is very positive in that, and the rest of the 6 qualities, varying degrees of, need to be equipped, if I may put it that way, average or even below average, but still they can be, made up for over a period of time through the rigor of training, those things. But not a single, everything is exemplary, but one is very negative, that is unacceptable.
100%. Right? If all 14s are very good, but I find one strength is like way too low. Like for example, courage. Somebody has got a fear of height. Somebody has got a fear of depth. He is not going to overcome it so fast, at least during the training period.
Yeah.
So rest all is fine. He is able to plan well, execute well, he is able to speak well, communicate well. But when an obstacle is given, he goes up, sees, shivers, and then comes down. So he's a straight away no for us, for the selection system per se, because in 6 months time or 1 year time, this is not going to change. It takes a lot of time. So if he improves himself and then come back to us again in 1 year time or 2 year time, we are okay with that.
There is another negative fallout also. In case you happen to select such an individual, what happens is he not only pulls himself down, but also the morale of the men.
That is definitely there. Yeah.
So that is going to be a huge dampener as far as the spirits of the armed forces are concerned, especially if he is going to be on the field.
Correct. So certainly that's why we see a candidate who has to have, if something is not there and he is potential enough, training can have an impact on him. If something is already negative, training is not going to create that much of impact on him. That is why we look into the candidate.
Okay. Now these are as far as the interview is concerned. And as far as the psychology aspects are concerned, I think they have for 3 days, right, SSB?
So the total selection procedure is for about 5 days. The first day is called as a stage 1 screening procedure, wherein normally you get about 150 to 200 candidates reporting at the board. We retain about 30 to 40 is the strength which is normally retained, and remaining 150 to 160 goes back on the first day itself. So the remaining 30 or 40 candidates is what they'll go through the stage 2 selection procedure, which is spread across over a period of 4 days. Now, on the second day morning, the psychology test will start, because we want you to be fresh without any this thing. So the first and foremost test which happens is a psychology, which normally starts at morning around 6:30 or 7 o'clock and goes on till about 11:30. Thereafter, one short break is given, and thereafter few candidates will be slotted for their interviews. So normally all interviews are slotted, and it is happening after 12 o'clock or so you can, and it goes until evening 5-6. So the third day morning is called GTO technique. In my technique per se, there are total 9 tasks, out of which 6 will happen on the third day morning. It starts again somewhere around 6:30, goes on till 11:30. And after 11:30, the interviews will be there. If you're not slotted for interview, if there is no interview planned for you, you are totally free. You can go and relax yourself. And the day 4, again it starts somewhere around 7 o'clock. My GTO remaining 3 tasks will happen. And then it gets over by 10:30, 11. And then anybody, if they are left with the interview, they will complete their interview. So by end of day 4, you're done with your psychology on day 2 itself. Day 3 and day 4, your GTOing has started from morning 6:30 to 11 or so. And after that, post all these days, from 11 onwards, your interviews would have been completed. Finally, on the 5th day, now the beauty about Armed Forces selection procedure is none of the assessor know who did for whom, and we don't interact with each other. Like, I do my job, I don't go and speak to an interviewing officer, I don't go and speak to my psychologist like who did that. So I go, I do my work, and then I go back home. I don't interact. Likewise, psychologists, when they get their dossiers, they sit in their room, they analyze, the room's doors are closed, they don't interact with anybody. And they don't want somebody to disturb them also when they're doing the assessment. Likewise, the interviews one-on-one, 45 minutes to 1 hour, nobody is disturbed. And then they take a break of 15 minutes and the next candidate moves in. So that's how the procedure. We don't interact. Actually, to be this thing, we don't see also. If there is no requirement, we don't see each other also.
Exactly.
We meet up on the 5th day, on the board conference day. And that is when we come out with certain amount of marks on a scale, and then we put across to the board. And during the board conference, all the assessors will be there. Like, for example, there is one chess number. The candidates are given some chess numbers. So on chess number, let's call it chess number 3. So his chess number 3, his name is called out, and then they will say marks, please. So thereafter, the group testing officer say the marks, then the psychology says the marks, and the interviewing officer say the marks. If it is to some level and they are which is at a discussion level, we discuss, and thereafter we call the candidate and few questions, and he is through. If he is not making to the grade, and then again he's called, customary questions are asked, and then he's through. So that's how the selection system is fair.
Okay, so all these 3 happen in the interview, psychology, and the group test. All these things happen in about a span of 5 days.
Correct.
Prospective candidate who has been retained after the first day also continues and to undergo all these tests. And finally, when a person is shortlisted, he is informed over a period of time.
And the 5th day conference normally starts about morning 8 o'clock or so. It goes until 12. So they have their lunch by around 12:30. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we declare the results that out of that 40, how many got recommended. Now, this we ourselves can't tell. There may be a time I would have passed from my technique, he is okay. But the same boy either not performed well or not okay with the other 2 techniques.
But all this assimilation, and it is communicated over post, right?
No. So nowadays on the spot.
And listeners, this is all about the recruitment process, how a commissioned officer is selected and how rigorous it is, and what are the requirements the Indian Armed Forces, look at from a prospective commissioned officer. That was joining the Indian Armed Forces, the first part. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander Vimal Raj, on behalf of All India Radio and the listeners. We'll meet next time, and probably listeners, care to tune to All India Radio program of English. We would also like to know something about the gamut of recruitment process and how a person who aspires to become a commissioned officer, what he needs to prepare himself, and what are the scope that the Indian Armed Forces offer to a commissioned officer, and what are the streams through which one can enter. Anyway, it has been pleasure talking to you, Lieutenant Commander Vimal Raj. That's it for tonight, this part of the interaction and program in English tonight. Thank you so much, sir.